You are now listening.
You are now listening
to the Black Male Educators Alliance podcast.
Lifting our voices.
Lifting our voices.
Welcome back to a new season of the BMEA Podcast, Lifting Our Voices. This is season 5, and I'm your co-host, Michael Payne, and I'm with the one, the only, honorable, extraordinary.
I thought you was going to come up with some new stuff, man.
Extraordinary was new.
You said that before. Okay, my bad. Carry on.
Magnificent.
Okay.
Dr. Curtis L. Lewis, how you feeling, man?
I'm good, man.
Good to see you,
man. You had like 2 or 3 weeks to kind of come up with something.
Look, I had more, but you broke up my flow.
Oh, my bad. I did. That's my apologies.
Next show, I got you.
You got me. Okay. I'm
yes, sir.
Work on that. I'm
how
good,
you
man.
Feeling,
I'm
man?
good, man. I'm real good. Feeling good today. How about you?
I'm doing well, man. We've had a 2-week break. Had some time off, man. Really good to restore and rejuvenate. How was your break?
It was good, man. I didn't, I know I was talking all that stuff like I was going to take a break. And, I did for a minute.
For a second.
I was waiting on my shoes from this guy here. We got to talk about it. I've been waiting on my shoes, and my shoes is like my lifesaver. Those,
okay.
I always forget those. What's the name of them shoes?
Ginger shoes.
Ginger shoes. I don't know why.
Okay.
It's my shoes. Okay. I was waiting on my shoes. But I've been good, man. Just went home to Chicago, the best city in the country.
Detroit.
After Detroit. In the country, and really it was really refreshing to be there. And I don't think I've been there a whole week in a long time, so it was really nice to just get away. And then, I'm a house head, so the house picnic was great.
It was fun.
It was great. It's just good energy. So I like to see a lot of black people having fun. Absolutely.
It was my first time going, and I can second that. It was great to see all those black folks having a good time, just generations, young and old. Weather was nice, you know what I mean? It got a little hot out there, but it was a good day for a festival for house music too, man. So it was great, good time in Chicago. Chicago's one of the better cities that I can tell you in the summertime. I have to admit,
yes,
it is one. Detroit as well, you know what I'm saying? But I'm here all the time. But Chicago visiting, in the summer has been great. So let's get into the episode. This month we want to focus on the community and wellness. So we couldn't find a better guest to join us today than Mr. Tyree Williams, owner of Pillar and Pride. How you doing today?
Doing great.
Great.
Today is a good day.
Today's a good day. So, like we were just saying, the 2 weeks off was a part of our focus on wellness as an organization. And although a lot of our work is in education, we cannot separate the schools from the community. So in today's episode, we just want to talk a little bit about just the community, black community specifically, and then taking care of ourselves and wellness. But we like to kick it off with some hot topics. First, I want to, as an organization, we give our condolences to the family of Winter Cole Smith, the 2-year-old girl who was kidnapped. Very sad story. I know we were following that a little bit when it first happened. And, it's just tragic anytime a child is taken from it. I know people are losing children all over, but I know that story kind of struck a chord with us just because unnecessary and somewhat angering too when you see black men harming the family and harming the community. I didn't know if you had some comments about that, Doc.
I do, man, but that story just also being Tyree and I both went to Michigan State. So, it all started in Lansing, right? And so, I taught in Lansing for a while. So that's also, like Detroit, second home for me. Still down there a lot. And so just, knowing the impact it's had on, like, the entire country, but particularly because Lansing is a tight-knit, small community. Everybody kind of know everybody. So the impact it's having on the city of Lansing, but also down here in Detroit, those stories really they get me fired up, but they also piss me off. And they get me fired up to continue to push to do the work we're doing because there's something missing, right? And we can get into all that in a minute. But the other piece, it angers me because I think it's to put a kid. I remember growing up in Chicago, right? And we grew up in the projects. And when there were always violence or the gangs about to get into it, the elders who were in the gangs will always get the kids out the way. Like, y'all go in the house, it's about to go down. Like, we knew, that when they were coming around and we went, right? And so just to see how we just have lost like the kids are not able, they're not safe anywhere, right?
Yeah,
and we've lost that.
Too often unprotected.
Yeah, and that pisses me off. So I'm gonna turn it over to Tyree because I know.
No, I mean it's a tough one, man. But even in this situation, you're harmed by the person that is supposed to be your first line of defense, right? So, like you mentioned, something's broken. A lot of a lot is just self-worth, self-value, and having some rules to how we manage and live our lives. Somebody that has that believes that this is the only action that they could take to resolve whatever was going on with their personal relationship or their relationship within themselves. This was the action that you thought was going to resolve that. Yeah, we got some work to do on demonstrating to people that there are alternative ways to handle whatever the conflicts you may be facing in your life.
Go ahead.
No, I agree with him. I think it's these are results of things that have been brewing for too long or going unnoticed, whether it's mental health. Like, I think that we are grossly underestimating how many people are mentally unwell in our communities. And I think that it's clear there's not enough services for them or response to the services, but also don't think we're proactive enough or preventative enough.
No, absolutely not.
To where we are taking care of kids' mental health early, like young, before the boys become teenagers or become young men and get in relationships and have children. So it's saddening, but I like you said, I know that that's part of the work that we're doing now is trying to heal these boys and make sure the boys are well going into adulthood so they don't become men that harm their community.
Yeah, or they ultimately become men, because I think a lot of times the folks that we're looking at, you may be 25, 30 years old, but you're not a man. Right. Like you're still underdeveloped yourself. You don't know how to deal with conflict. You don't know how to be proactive and go and seek help where you have enough self-awareness to understand that you need help, and then the wherewithal to go and seek it. Yeah. They're just not mature. Yeah. Like you may be 35 years old and still in a mind state of a 14-year-old. Yep. Right? So there's a lot to be worked on in that area. I think what you all do in education is one of the pillars of kind of bridging that gap. Because a lot of these kids are not seeing positivity, encouragement, building self-esteem in the home, and they end up being like this guy that did what he did to his daughter. Yeah. Right. So, yeah. I
think too, man, we lack an accountability. I think for some reason, man, this whole, and I'm not even getting into the whole snitching, the snitching issue thing. I don't even want to talk about that. But I think from the early ages, we don't hold our children accountable. In the community, we've lost that accountability. Can nobody tell nobody nothing anymore? There's no rule. Right. Right. So that system or that community that we had, I talk about community a lot on this. That's what we're missing. Yeah. Right. Like my mom, all of us grew up in an area where, lady down the street, Miss Susie can
get you together.
Yeah, Miss Jones can get me together and take me to my mama. Yeah. And say he was in my yard playing or whatever. We had no yard back then, but he was down on my porch doing whatever the case may be. Yeah. And so we've lost that. Can't nobody say nothing to nobody's kid. Right? And respectfully, I know there's a respect thing there for sure, right? Always. But we've lost that piece, and we don't hold people accountable. And that stuff starts as early as elementary school, right? Where it's okay for little Johnny or whoever to get away with this. And so we have to begin, because I talk about this all the time. Love is not absent of accountability. You don't love me if you're not holding me accountable. Yeah. I mean that. I feel strong about that. Yeah. So people who are around people, somebody love you, so you get to do whatever you want. That's not love, right? And so we gotta sort of reestablish, reignite that energy into our communities, and it starts in our homes, but also our schools got to do a better job of doing that stuff too. Yeah. I know Tyree gonna get to talk about soon too some of the work that he's doing and some of the sessions. I know he has those Keen's conversations. I want you to get into that at some point too. But this is the kind of work that we got to do, right? But it starts with accountability, and I think that's, to me, one of the number one things that I think is missing. Accountability of parenting. Yeah, let's go there. We've been No, facts. We were just talking before we started, because I have a problem about them ticket things. I don't know why I'm so sensitive about this new law with this ticket, but we ain't gonna talk about that. We said we weren't. We said we weren't. No, because I don't know why. I feel like in another year or two we're gonna see this uptick.
See, that's the law holding you accountable.
That's true. Just fairly, just make sure it's equitable, right?
Yeah, we know there's all kinds
just make sure and you ain't just looking at
landmines and that.
Man,
won't be applied with
it's
equity.
opening to something else for sure.
Man. Anyway, so
Yeah.
I think he was saying like, man, I don't want my son texting. He's a new driver. That's real. I'm gonna hold you accountable. Don't come on with no ticket.
Yeah.
That's gonna be I'm not saying you got to go beat him because I don't think that's it either, right?
Right, and I don't think that was ever the case even with Miss Sally down the street. At least not when we were growing up. But what was established was a basic respect.
Yes.
For her. I wasn't afraid that Miss Sally from down the street was gonna whoop me.
That's right. That's real.
I just knew if Miss Sally seen me doing something that was sideways, and she told my parents, they were gonna be disappointed. Yes. They might get me together.
Yes.
They might put some hands down, but
that's real.
But it was I knew that the elders in the community were watching over.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they cared enough about me that they would actually inform my parents. And I think now people that you don't want to intervene with. You see a child that may not be yours doing something sideways, and you don't want to intervene, not to even tell their parents, because you don't know how the parents going to respond. What you doing talking to my kid?
I watch kids act up a fool in front of their parents, and I'm like, I want to give them advice. I don't know, how do I help? Because it's like some of the times it seems like, oh, they just letting it go because they think it's cute, which is a part of the problem. Because when they get older, they ain't gonna be cute no more. And you've established all these bad habits. But what about the parents who are watching their kids behave like this, and they don't have any tools or whatever to resolve it or fix it or redirect it? And so it's like, dang, we're not even in spaces, communities where I can go up and tell you how to be a parent. Not saying I know everything about being a parent, but look, hey, have you tried this? Or hey, I don't know you, but I know you don't want this to continue going on. Maybe you do, but it's not good for the community. And that's the whole point. I don't want to be in your business. Is that your business, your child business is going to be the community business if he outside acting like that.
Real.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's always been my thing. Everybody's problem. Children are everybody's problem.
Absolutely. Because at some point
they're going to be outside.
and they're going to meet. Yeah, I'm concerned about how you are parenting your child, because they might bump into my child.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So it is of a concern to me.
Especially when your kids is driving. Don't be on my road with my road. Don't be on my road.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
So Tyree, what do you think we could do? What do you think is some solutions potentially to, if the goal is to reignite or to reestablish this, community accountability system? What have you been thinking about, even in your role and the work that you're doing? I know we're gonna talk about that later, but what do you think?
But I think just in general, as a community, outside of what we're doing at Pillar and Pride, it starts in the house, right? Establishing some standards, some ground rules of this is how we operate, and the way that we operate is going to be tied to respect. It's going to be tied to accountability. It's going to be tied to responsibility. All of these things that we can begin to establish within our homes then need to stretch into our neighbors. So I know when I send my kid over to Curtis' house, I send him over to Doc's house, I know what he's going to get. I know he's going to be safe. I know that the rules that Kurt has in his home are going to be ones that are going to keep they're going to be consistent with mine, and my child is going to be in good hands. If we can just continue to scale up that, it turns into the community. It turns into community. It's just how everybody begins to operate. What we don't have is that kind of standard that's being set and adhered to by the majority of families. So and that's ready? A whole nother piece.
You ready? I'm about to go there for a second. So you just got me hyped for a second. So, because I think there's this energy, I say dichotomy between sort of our educated middle class, upper middle class, black folks, and those who may not have the credentials, and I'm using these air quotes on purpose. And so how do we, what do you think is, because I think there's a gap and I don't think we talk to each other. I think we create our own little mini communities, right? Like, we're very intentional about, Jonah ain't going to a lot of people's cribs. Right. He's just not. Yeah. Right? He go to Chris' crib, and CJ most likely come over here, and vice versa. Like, that's what we do. Because we know each other. It's a privilege
to be able to see my kids.
Man, really. So how do we create, because we creating a space amongst ourselves, but we also talking about those who may not have the means or whatever it is going to take to build that kind of community that we're building. How do we bridge that gap between, folks like us? I'm not saying like I'm not sure. You know what I'm trying to say?
No, exactly what
like
you
that,
mean.
but like, folks who are interested in building a community, who has the means to do that, versus those who like, look, I ain't got no babysitter. I got to do. He got to go wherever he got to go. Right? How do we bridge that? Either one of y'all.
I mean, honestly, I saw it a lot personally when I was coaching, like the sports, coaching Mikey's teams, because he had teammates that he would join, and I could see their family situation wasn't the same, right? And then being that figure in those child's lives, you were able to kind of model a little bit of, like you said, this is how I do it, this is how we do it at our house, this is how we do it, you know what I'm saying, when you're around me, and which kids still respond to, right. Which is, I think people misunderstand is that, like, it's not that kids are afraid of structure or discipline. Sometimes they look for it, but you got to be able to be consistent with it, and it has to come with some sort of love that makes it worthwhile. And I think the other thing is mentoring, right? I'm not going to just be in your house, in these houses, people's houses, and I can't just say, oh, you can hang with my son because so you have this opportunity. But what I can say is that there's many men that can mentor and can instill, like I said, the sense of community where it's like you don't just know your mama's family and then their family and then the people on your street. You know people in the city that you can look to kind of like understand how do I become a man, or how do I grow up, or how do I take care of a family and things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, if you think about it, outside of the church and the school and your neighborhood, where else do you go and like build community? And oftentimes there's not that many other places. People stop going to church as much sometimes, and then the school might not really be some place that, obviously we talked about schools not really connected like the community like it used to be. So how do we do it? I mean, I think part of it is just like men and women going out and building those relationships at like a mentoring level or at like a community level for kids to have an opportunity to kind of like be in those spaces.
Yeah. I think that there's not enough. There are some that exist, and there's some that have existed for a long time, right? That try to foster this community and maintain that consistency. But to Curtis, to your point, it's oftentimes it feels like separation. It feels like isolation because some of the organizations can be closed. We're part of the Jack and Jill organization. My family is, right? And believe me, I had, and my opinions are developing over time. But going in, for me, it was, this is where, folks with means go to get safe harbor from those that don't, and make sure that their kids are exposed to, only the similar caliber, of children, right? So they don't get soiled by the balance of broader community, right?
I like your work.
So, thank you. But that's kind of what it was kind of going in. But what you do begin to understand as part of these organizations is that it's still a whole lot of commonality amongst the parents and the kids, where we came from, what we went through, what our parents went through, and where they came from. Some folks are brand new to having the means. Some may have been, more of legacy, right? But still have their own baggage. And you begin to understand that even within these closed communities, there can be a great diversity within even those types of communities. But just to your question, how do we grow that? There's nothing to stop us from developing community right on our own block, in our own group of blocks. We have some young people, man. One of the things that's been most inspiring to me about Pillar and Pride is having young people that are already very well aware of who they are and what they want to do in terms of having a positive impact on their community, and they're doing the work. They're doing the work, and they're building what we're talking about. They're showing up as examples in the community where the 5, 3, 7-year-olds are looking and saying, what what's going on right there? Why are these people together, and they're together for a positive impact? They're out doing, 7 2-day neighborhood cleanups. They're doing toy drives in the neighborhood, not you come to our special, sanitized facility out in the suburbs, come pick up your free toys. No, we coming to you, we're going to be on your porch with it. So you're going to see us. And to your point, there's going to be an expression of love when you do. You're going to feel us in addition to see. So that kind of is happening. Yeah. It just doesn't oftentimes get amplified like stories like Winter.
Right. Yeah. No, I appreciate you bringing that up too, because I think you bring a good point. There are people, we know, our boy Jawan is out here. Thank you for introducing me to that good brother. He's doing amazing things out here. Amongst other, there's a bunch of folks also.
There's a lot of them,
man. So I think there's a generation of folks that are like I'm about to take this into my own hands, which I think is good. I think our generation kind of sucked at that, but I think we were trying to figure something out too. I think we were on the verge of like, there's opportunity, so let's go. And I think this group is like, nah, I'm doing this my way. What y'all was doing, this ain't the work. I ain't finna listen to this structure. I ain't finna go to no, Fortune 500 company. I'm about to create this myself. So I'm excited about the Gen Zers, right?
Yes. I believe so.
Yeah, I think it's
the mid 20s.
Yeah, they're on point. But the other piece, you talked about this inside of Pillar and Pride one day, and I said we're going to talk about this on podcast, and I ain't trying to go there. The Jack and Jill stuff, because my son is also involved in that as well, and I just want us to be very careful. And I'm no, Jack and Jill. Because I understood 40, 50, whatever long ago it started. I'm sure it was longer than that. Why?
Yeah.
I just want us to think about now, how do we create spaces? Because I know what the application process was that my son's mom went through to get him, to make sure we were good, right? But I just wonder,
how she had to be even allowed to apply?
Right. How do we?
You have to be invited.
You get invited in, right? So how do we break down some of those barriers? And I'm not saying, Jack, keep doing y'all thing, but how can we create other spaces? And I know we talk about other people who are doing it, but because I want to also make this point too. I don't think it's about people of different socioeconomic status have different values. That is not at all what I'm even alluding to at all. Because I grew up poor as heck, and I still have the same values now than I had as a kid, right? So I don't think it's about SES. I think it's more so just mindset and how people, their views on life or whatever the case may be. But how do we create spaces, a Jack and Jill, for people who may not have the credentials or be invited in? How do we create those spaces? Because I think we need to continue to support folks like me, how we grew up, right? Because I wouldn't have gotten in Jack and Jill growing up. I knew about it. I wasn't going to get in because of the conditions I came from, right? So how do we create other opportunities for people, right?
Well, were there other things that were offered that structurally? You got, and this is not to suggest that it's enough by any stretch, because it ain't. We don't have enough opportunities for our young people. But you mentioned it before, which I think is a huge opportunity and oftentimes the catalyst for building stronger communities, and that's through sports and through activity. We get access to these kids through their physical activities, through sports, whether it be football, basketball, or whatever. They're oftentimes exposed to that. It's somewhere to spend their time, to not have idle time. It's somewhere to get physically, develop physical habits that are good for you long term. Burn off some negative energy and tension and stress and anger and everything else a lot of these kids dealing with. But what happens when that's happening? You got a coach like Mike that's there to support you, not just on how to make the left hand layup, but how to make the right choices when you at home or at school, right? It's not just about dribbling the ball. So I don't think it always has to be a formal paid membership organization type of thing. We have to take every opportunity that we have to interact with our young people and each other to build community. One of the shirts that we developed at Pillar and Pride, it simply says, "I speak to Black people." Right? And the "I speak to Black people" T-shirt, it came from going to the reunion of the Million Man March, and like wanting to be kind of provocative in terms of stimulating these types of conversations with just random people. Like, man, what you think about this? Oh, you kind of thinking the same thing? Are you from Philly? Are you from Virginia? And we kind of similar mindset, similar purpose. So I'm not out here alone. The kids need to understand that too, that they're not out here alone. So I don't care if we in Jack and Jill or anything. My kids are exposed to other kids through sports, through school, through family and friends and neighborhood. It's not exclusive to some paid membership organization.
Yeah, but I do think to that point, it just requires adults who are willing to step in those spaces. So Jack and Jill, I think, is covering a space, and like you said, we just need more people in more spaces for those who don't that doesn't cover. But I know we've alluded to it a lot, man. I want you to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about Pillar and Pride, why you started it, and then what is it for the community? Yeah,
so Pillar and Pride is a health and wellness destination. It's a family-owned operation. So myself, my wife, my younger cousin actually kind of runs the front of the house. My children work there. My niece, periodically. So we try to expose them to the operation. But when we say health and wellness destination, it's a pretty broad term, right? You'll never hear me call Pillar and Pride a store, right? Even though we do some retailing. I call it a shop because our intentions are to build things. That's build relationships, build access to not only healthier alternative products to consume, but also access to education and an understanding of what it means to be well, which again is a huge umbrella term. Like, wellness is everything from the physical, spiritual, emotional, community wellness, versus your individual wellness. I mean, there's wellness is a broad umbrella, but we just operate as a space that is there to support you wherever you are in your wellness journey. So if you're looking to access whatever products for yourself, we're here for that. If you're looking to access information, our network is open. So we try to point people to the right directions. If we're not the subject matter experts in a certain area, we probably know somebody that is, and we're going to help connect you with that. All right. We hold a number of different programs and workshops inside our space. Dr. Curtis Lewis mentioned one of them, King's Conversation. I got to get used to calling you that.
Please don't. Please don't call me
King's Conversation is one where it's actually a forum, a safe space for Black men to come together and just share. So we have a themed topic every month, every first Sunday of the month, where we just come together and discuss, whether it be health, anger management, relationships. We have a themed topic for folks to come in and just share and build. In the same space where we hold those conversations, we have a podcast studio. We offer that to the community to come and record and get their voices heard as well. So it's a multifaceted space that we're very proud of and inspired by the support that we're getting from the community as well.
It's dope. And you mentioned the podcast space. So you have your podcast as well, the We Build podcast.
Yeah. Pillar and Pride We Build. Yeah.
Okay, so talk a little bit about like the discussions that you have on that, and there's the purpose of that show.
So again, like I call it a shop because we build things, and that's why we call the podcast We Build. And that we is inclusive of not just us as the kind of host of the podcast, but also of our guests who are those that are contributing in some shape, form, or fashion to positive developments in the community. So we look to have those conversations with it's a wide range of folks, from many facets of kind of expertise, whether that be we have Mr. Muhammad, who's a cyclist who builds bikes and works on bicycles for folks that actually ride bikes professionally in things like Tour de France, right? And he's located right here in Detroit, and we don't know that. That folks are shipping their bikes in from France to have them worked on by Mr. Muhammad here in Detroit to send them back so that they can race and for multi-million-dollar prizes, right? But we've had Mr. Jawan Howard on the podcast. We've had nutritionists on the podcast. We've had musicians on the podcast. So, but all of the commonality of all of these folks is that they are contributing in a positive way to the wellness and upliftment of Detroit.
So, we visited the shop, and it was dope to see all the things working. And I think that wellness, when you talk about wellness, it feels like revolutionary in terms of the Black community. It feels new, and I think there's a lot that people don't know when it comes to the wellness, even just eating healthy, like just starting there. Because I know you mentioned spirituality, and I know you talk about like mindfulness, but like where did you start in your wellness journey, and like what are some misconceptions that most people have? We say maybe Black people have in the community about like taking care of themselves.
Yeah, well, first you're right. It is. There's a long history of just taking care of ourselves. We've as Black people have been doing it and doing it particularly well for a long time, and a lot of what we are trying to do is actually just go back to the practices that were being practiced before, right? And some of that information on how to do so can be elusive, and that's where we try to serve as a place, as a destination for information, as much as a destination for products. But yeah, wellness is pretty broad, and it's pretty deep. In my journey, I'd say it's been multiple stages, right? I'm 46 years old, right? Always been conscious of my physical wellness, right? It's just always been something I was conscious of. I was an athlete, growing up, and just always conscious of my body and trying to take care of it, but never really, maximizing taking care of myself. Right. It'd be sporadic, little spurts of, I know this isn't right. Let me go ahead and back off for a few months, and then I'm back to the old behaviors. Right. What has changed for me in the last three and a half years has been more of a dedication to maintaining the healthy habits for long stretches of time. For longer stretches of time, not these little sprints, and I go off the wagon and back. But what spurred that was really, I had a bit of a health concern myself a few years ago. So I just went in for a regular checkup, with the doc, one day, wasn't feeling great. I thought it was just a little run down, like flu type of thing going on. And I took my blood pressure and was like, hey, you sure you okay? Like, yeah, no, I think I'm cool. I'm just a little cold, maybe coming down with something. It was like, nah, the way your pressure reading, you're not leaving here without a prescription. So it's like that. So I'm like, oh, whoa, wait a second. Never had a negative report at the doctor before, right? And at the same time, there was a little something going on, like a bit of a rash on my my left shoulder. And I mentioned that to the doc. She took a look at it. Said, "Well, yeah, we'll go ahead and swab it. We'll test it. We'll see what's up." And she came back. It was shingles. I'm like, wait a second. I'm 42 years old. That's for 70-years. What are you talking about? Like shingles, but it was brought on by poor diet, stress. Not having, managing your body weight. It can be brought on by a number of different things. It's really kind of the chicken pox laying dormant. If you've ever had chicken pox, you're at risk of having shingles. But when that happened to me, it was hold on a second. We need to change the trajectory of how we live, right? Particularly for my children. So all of these things kind of happen synergistically. As that happened, and we had just acquired the property that you now know as Pillar and Pride, that wasn't our original intention. It developed into that as I began to explore different ways to modify my lifestyle and try to improve my conditions, right? And I couldn't find what I was looking for readily available to me. I had to go to somebody else's community when, like we just mentioned, we are traditionally, this is us. Yeah. We invented, self-care. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But I have to go to Dearborn and Royal Oak and all these other places to go and find the things to support me on my journey. It was unacceptable. So Pillar and Pride was born.
First of all, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's, as we talk about blood pressure, one of our producers here of this show, I've been on his head about. And he just went to the doctor and texted me right here at the doctor, like, bro, my blood pressure's out. Yeah, bro, like, it's serious. And I think as black men in particular, we know, because we can, people think unhealthiness is physically you are out of shape. Like, oh, you're unhealthy, right? Like, Chris Watson is healthy, slim guy, a healthy looking guy, right? Yeah. Tyree ain't never been had a belly like Kurt, you know what I'm saying? So he never, and I had one either when we first met in '97, but life changes, lifestyles, as you know. But my point is, there is an assumption that we're good because it's particularly with blood pressure, because blood pressure leads to so many other things. Oh yeah, the kidneys, everything else, the heart, right? And we think because it's not something we automatically always feel. Right? It's like you don't always feel it. So when I went through this about 10 years ago, because it's just something that runs in the family. And I'm not taking that, I'm going to do whatever I got to do. And when I kept going, the doctor was like, Kurt, if you don't do this, if you don't take this or change, I need you to take this now to get you on track. And then after that, you can work on it. Then you can retire. Then you can do your thing. Right. Yeah. But right now, I need this pill. Yeah. Because it was like you walking around here 175, 180, over 105, like, bro, you take your time, like at any point. Yeah. And then it's why we wondering, like, man, he seems so healthy. He was, 38 years old and had a major stroke. Like, this is real. Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that, though, man. And I want to push the store. Oh my God, the shop. The shop. Because I think it's important. Like, for me, I don't get down there as much as I want to. But, like, it's important that to have a place like that in the city, because to your point, we got to go in Detroit, we got to go to the suburbs sometimes to go to the grocery store. I mean, we're trying to get better with that. That's wild. Right? But it is unacceptable for a major city that you got to go outside to go to the store. But that's a whole other conversation. So to have Pillar and Pride on 7 Mile and Woodward is a pillar in the community in itself, right? And I think it's like, kudos to you and your wife, man, because a lot of us don't want, and I'm very adamant about where you also put it. Yeah. Because you could also went out to the suburbs too. Right. Or had it somewhere in the neighborhood. I mean, even though I know you go further down the street, it's on point. But you also have it in a space that's accessible to everybody. Woodward, everybody can get to Woodward. Yeah. Right? And so, like, kudos to you, man. I don't think we get enough love. We always giving love to people right here, doing other stuff and singing and dancing and whatever. But, like, people actually doing the work in the community, man, because y'all could have done that anywhere else. And that, like, that's giving back in so many ways. But I'm not surprised because this brother here, now I got to say this and I'm going to be quiet because I'm about to embarrass you.
And there's one thing I do want to touch on, God. I'll let you finish, but there's one other thing I want to touch on.
Okay, I got you. I thought I'd brag on you for a minute. So back, so I met this dude back in 97. Yeah. Been one of the smartest dudes I've ever.
Like a long time.
That was a long time. That was a long time. That was 97 in the summer. We did sports camp together. Yeah. Tyree, I was supposed to go to Zimbabwe with him. He was like, man, you need to go. And just mindset, man. I don't know what was going on. I still regret that trip. But when he came back, I thought he was about to go into teaching, so I was hyped. Remember we started that program at Wood Creek? Uh-huh. Yeah, we started an after-school program. Like, literally just us starting up and went in, was tutoring and supporting kids.
Randy was there too.
Yeah, supporting kids at Wood Creek Elementary. So I was like, man, you think you about to go into teaching?
I did.
Did you go into teaching? No, with this, you're right. My bad.
No.
What you talking about? You was teaching?
Yeah, I'll come to that in a
Look,
second.
I don't know how I missed that. Okay, I want to hear that teacher story. I want to hear that teacher story because I missed that.
Yeah.
But no, he's always been, man. Even at Michigan State, we've been on people's heads. He was the first thing that I looked up to my freshman year, going to my sophomore year, who was about that life, who was putting the pressure on the university to do right by black people. So, like, I owe this man a lot. Love this guy. This is my guy. I know I thought I was going to embarrass him. So, it's full circle to have you, even on the show, supporting. I mean, like, people don't know that, but we go back 20 years, and this has always been my guy, even though we don't talk every day. It's still always my guy. I can call on him all the time. So, I just wanted to point that out and embarrass you for a minute, but you go ahead with your thing.
I appreciate that, man. I love you, too.
Hey, for sure.
Yeah, just one point on wellness before it escapes me, because you mentioned it, that, we kind of walking around ticking time bombs. One of the things that I discovered as I began to go on my journey, because I did drop about 25 pounds. That was part of my mission. I had to drop weight. So that was the heaviest I ever was in my life, 3.5 years ago. So I was totally on the wrong track, right? So one of the first things I knew I needed to do was drop some weight. But what I think oftentimes happens is that we learn to be satisfied with not feeling well. Like, not feeling well becomes feeling normal, right? And that's part of the problem. Like, you're supposed to be able to touch your toes. Like, but but I don't. Like, I can't. So that's why is that your normal? Like, we become just accustomed to. I always had this pain in my shoulder.
That's real.
It's just always there. It's always been there. That's just what it is.
Real.
Nah. Like, we've just grown accustomed to and accepting not feeling good. That's right. Good. So once I think we begin to really kind of actively address the things that are having us not feel well, and you start turning them around, like, I started feeling better. So then that became motivation for me. Like, I want more of that. I can actually run up and down the court again a little bit. Like, all right, I'm kind of liking this. So just wanted to get you on that piece. Like, just not get complacent and not feeling well.
I know we got to go. We've been talking for a minute. What do you think? How do we? Because there's this mistrust with doctors, right? And there ain't enough of us in these hospitals too that we can build that trust. So how do we fight through that anxiety around people who I know they, my auntie went through this and they, all these things that we have in the back of our head. And we also know medicine also was something that we weren't getting true access to and also was treated. And it's still, our black women are dying at rates at childbirth more than anybody because of the care they receive. So we know it's real. So how do we reconcile sort of the reality versus but we still got to also make sure we're going and get checked up.
Yeah. I mean, it's choices, man. It's choices. But here's what I would say to that. One of the brothers that participates in the King's conversation, I think, kind of landed it as well as I've ever heard it. And that's, first of you have to be an advocate for yourself. Like, there should be no doctor that knows your body better than you know your body. Period. So when you go and see the doctor, it's not about just giving all of your trust in them and please, deliver me from this ailment, right? It's a partnership to say, here's what's going on with my body. What do you think? Right? Oh, okay, that's great. I'm gonna get another opinion, or let me ask you some more questions and understand a bit more deeply what it is you're recommending to me. So you want me to take this prescription? Well, what is it? And when they can't tell you, then you should be raising the eyebrow, right? But it shouldn't be I don't go because I don't trust you. Is I go and there's a certain relationship that I'm looking to establish with the doctor. I want to tap into what you know, and then I'll apply the pieces of that to my life where they make sense for me and my body as I understand it.
Okay, because we can't Googling ain't it. We can't Google.
You can do both. You can do Google. You can do a lot of different things. Like you can walk into a hospital and see a modern day doctor. We can talk to folks that are in the holistic space. You can do internet research as well. I mean, there's a lot of things a lot of areas that you can go for information, but the most important part of all is that you have to be discerning.
Yeah.
That's where it gets kind of difficult. It's so much information that it can be overwhelming. But if you start with knowing your body and how it responds to certain things you do to it. So look, you tell me to take this and take that, and it's not agreeing with me. I know that it's my reality. I'm not gonna keep taking it. We got to find something different. We got to do something else.
So I know we got to go, but is there something? Because I feel like I'm always like thinking about how we like educate people, right? So is there something that y'all have or should be created that like people like? What are the 5 things to do to engage with a doctor in a hospital that's advocating for yourselves, just so that people? There's a lot of people who don't think to like. What does it mean to be an advocate? To advocate for myself. Yep. Like people don't even know how to do that. Like we do a lot of that work with students, right, parents, and teachers, right, and principals. Like being able to advocate for self is not something people automatically know how to do, because oftentimes with black people, often seems that you're being rebellious or you're being an angry black man or the loud angry black woman. So thinking about, is there any space or if there should be something created that we put out there for like, hey, the 5 things you should do. Simple, for self, advocating for yourself. And I got a cousin, God rest her soul, just died today from cancer, breast cancer, black woman, been in the hospital 2 or 3 months. And I know, there's, people got questions about how they was treated and da-da-da-da. And that's real, right? Because we're dying from this stuff when other people not down as much. The rates are not as high. So just something to think about. No, that's a great thing to build on. Like we have like an info blog on our website, so you can go and check out different information, but nothing today around advocacy in healthcare, but things like what is heart disease and what can you do about it? What is lung disease? What can you do about it? The importance of stretching, the importance of meditation. Like we have like infographics and stuff up there, so if you want to check it out on our website, that is available. But you just put another one on the list. It's something we can certainly do, and it's not only a good piece for the person who may be suffering from the ailment. Oftentimes when you're in that type of condition, you don't have the wherewithal to advocate for yourself, so you need somebody else to step in, and maybe they need the guide to say, here are the things. It's not about me, it's about her. But doc, you're gonna need to answer these questions for me. You're gonna need to explain this more thoroughly for me. I need to see all the options. I want them written down. I don't want you just tell so I can go and get those other opinions and et cetera. So, but that's a good one. I put a thumbtack in that. That's something we can build for sure.
Yeah, I think it's great that I think what you serve as is a space for knowledge, because I think so much of our health and our wellness is based on like traditionally what we've done, like however I watched my father take care of himself, how I watched him eat, how I watched him sleep. Those are the things that we take, and so I think specifically to the black community, a lot of our unhealthiness is tied maybe to traditional lifestyle 100%. Choices, and then also how we deal with stress. So I absolutely
that's
think
very, very important, man. I know we got to shut this thing down because you mentioned it before, and I to chime in on it too. You said like it runs in my family type of thing. Yeah. I say what runs typically in our families is not that diabetes. You born with diabetes and it's running through your veins. It's in your what's running through us are the habits that you ate like this since you were able to chew. And now that's been 20 years later. All of the hot tamales annihilators and Fago pops and all this. So and then you throw alcohol on it on top of that, right? It's the habits. It's not necessarily things that are always locked in our DNA. That's right.
Because I want us to, and this is the last point, I'm sorry, we really have to support our parents with feeding our children when they come to school. so much of those children's diet affect how they function in the class, where they can pay attention, their stomach hurts, all those things you hear. A kid got a headache. I'm like, what'd you drink today? Well, I just had a can of soda at 8 o'clock in the morning. Pop, I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? 8 o'clock in the morning. And it's just like, your health, how your child eats is going to affect how they are showing up to school and how they're going to live their life. So I just think that knowledge is so important. It's just as important as what they're learning in the classroom, is learning how to take care of themselves, learning how to stay healthy. I think it's going to be one of the most important things for our community. So we want to thank you for joining us, man. It's been great to kick off the season 5 with you, just talking about the black community. Can you let people know where to find you, where to find the store, and then also just access more information?
Yeah, for sure. First off, thank y'all for having me, man. It's great to share space with y'all. I love what you're doing with the organization, with the podcast. Keep it up. We need to be in all lanes. But with regard to Pillar and Pride, you can find us on 7 Mile and Woodward here in Detroit. You can find us at pillarandpride.com. You can find us at Pillar and Pride Detroit on Instagram, and Pillar and Pride on Facebook and TikTok. So we kind of all over the place. The podcast can be accessed through our website. It's also on Apple, Google, Spotify, and Buzzsprout. So you can catch up on some of our conversations there as well.
Absolutely
That's
dope.
great.
Got any last words?
No, man. I just want to say, Michelle Obama tried to do the healthy food stuff, and people jumped on her back. So, just saying, she tried. She tried to put all.
I don't think she see what they feeding
them
kids.
But people.
She knows what they feed.
I know. They had a little piece of broccoli. I get it, and 1 carrot. But she that was decent effort.
She was
that was decent effort.
She can't feed the.
But no, we gonna stop, because I know Chris is like, it's cut. All right, so we good, man. Hey, appreciate you, brother, for coming, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, man. This has been another episode of the BMEA Podcast, Season 5. We appreciate you. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Peace.
You are now listening
to the Black Male Educators Alliance podcast.
Lifting our voices.
Lifting our voices.